After 6 near-perfect days for mountain biking, Saturday dawned a day for ducks. Torrential rain overnight had eased to intermittent drizzle by the time the teams began to line up for the start, which was delayed by an hour. Not to save the riders from the wet conditions, but rather to allow the route team to make the necessary changes to the course ahead of the truncated stage. The rain had begun on stage 5 already, though the elite men and women had finished before the worst of the weather arrived in Wellington. The fastest men actually avoided the rain on Friday altogether, thanks mainly due to the pace which Simon Stevjan set throughout much of the stage. The Bulls 2 team may have been the main protagonists, but it was Buff Scott's Hans Becking and Jose Diaz who completed the job. For the second day in a row, the pair attacked and went solo to the finish. They must have been left wondering what may have been were it not for their problematic start to the 2021 Absa Cape Epic. Behind the stage winners, Bulls 2 crossed the line second, with the overall race leaders, 91 Songo Specialized, completing the podium on the day. At the start of the penultimate stage, Matt Beers and Jordan Saru's advantage was 6 minutes and 39 seconds over Martin Fry and Simon Stevjan. Trek Borelli, Samuel Poro and Fabian Rabensteiner hold third, but Hans Becking and Jose Diaz were under 3 minutes off the final podium place. In the women's race, the stage winners also missed the rain, but it was anything but an easy day for 91 Songo Specialized. Faces CST, having finished the previous stage strongly, were on form on stage 5. They took the race to Sina Fry and Laura Stigger, making life difficult for the women in orange. Or difficult until the final climb, when 91 Songo Specialized managed to distance Mariska Strauss and Candice Lill on the Alpe d'Huez ascent. This was enough to allow Fry and Stigger to race to their 6th stage win of the event. Strauss and Lill were second, while Salusmed's Ariane Luthi and Robin de Groot lost just under 10 minutes to Faces CST. Zina Fry and Laura Stigger lead into stage 6 by 28 minutes and 51 seconds. The gap between second and third, though, was down to just 1 minute and 21 seconds. Ariane Luthi and Robin de Groot did just enough on stage 5 to hold their position ahead of Candice Lill and Mariska Strauss. But that could well change on the second last day of the race. Stage 6 of the 2021 Absa Cape Epic required some changes to be made to the originally planned 90-kilometre route because of heavy overnight rain. Around 9 kilometres and 200 metres of climbing were redacted to ensure rider safety. While some single tracks had to be removed, around 31 kilometres of the wild boar trails remained, including the True Grit Land Rover technical terrain. The weather and the effect it would have on the race was on everyone's mind ahead of the stage.
Yeah, we had a proper rain this night, and it will be a tough day for sure. Even if the stage is shortened, it will be hard, but I think it will be really muddy at some points. I like these conditions, and we will see.
I think key would be to try and stay at the front and stay out of trouble, because it'll just take one muddy puddle and you can sort of have opportunity to get away. And obviously when you're stuck in the bunch, you're forced into lines that you don't necessarily want to take. So I think key in the beginning would just be to stay out of trouble and try and stay out of the worst of the mud.
Departing Wellington for the unknown, the men were wrapped up with jackets, arm warmers or gilets at the very least. This would make spotting individuals difficult, especially as number boards became muddy later. But initially, there was an opportunity to assess who was up for the battle in the sludge and muck. Would any of the favourites crack on stage 6? The leading women's team had been imperious all week, but was this the day they would show weakness? After a chilly wait for starters' orders, the women were off and racing, riding as much to warm up as to complete the 81-kilometre stage. With slippery and puddle-strewn district roads forming the majority of the early kilometres, the group would remain together for a while. But staying at or near the front of the women's peloton was more important than ever. As the rain continued to fall in sporadic bursts, the men's field made their way through the early kilometres of the day. The low clouds and grey light had the Wellington winelands looking fertile in hues of damp greens and browns. Muddy pools littered the dual tracks and rivulets ran down the roads. The riders who had foregone foul weather clothing were already soaked to the bone. One team who chose to show off their leaders' jerseys rather than hiding them under trade team jackets was Paiga Eurosteel. While BMC KTM also gambled that the weather would soon clear, and that it gradually did, the cloud cover slowly blowing towards the southeast along the Limmitberg mountain range. Then sun even began to warm the vineyards. As their bodies warmed, the tempo maintained at the sharp end of the men's field was increased. Once again, Simon Stiepjan was setting the pace, as he had done for much of the previous two stages. The experienced Bulls 2 rider had certainly grown into the race as it progressed into its latter phases. Along with his partner Martin Fry, the lead group behind Stiepjan was made up of 91 Songo Specialized, Buff Scott, Trek Pirelli, BMC KTM and Paiga Eurosteel. With only 2 of the 6 combinations having stage wins in this edition of the race to their names, there was desire aplenty in the elite selection. Any prospective winner would have to best the on-form Buff Scott pair, however. Hans Becking and Jose Diaz were on the charge once again. With them driving up the pace on the second climb of the day, riders were being shelled up the back of the group. Philip Pace and Samueli Poro were the first to drop, forcing their teammates, Peter de Troy and Fabian Ravensteiner, to wait for them. Then, yellow jersey wearing Jordan Saru began to struggle. The roads and trails had already been churned up by 60 sets of tyres by the time the elite women's field hit the dirt. The sodden soil had reached saturation point and water oozed from the mud as their wheels compressed the surface. Grip would be at a premium, especially on the clay roads. Conditions were such that a small error could lead to a significant loss of time. A slight slip could bring a rider down, damaging a derailleur or unseating a tyre from a rim. Even at slow speed, the riding would be mentally taxing, requiring absolute focus, especially for the women in orange. With so much hard work having been done, only a major crash or mechanical realistically stood between 91 Songo Specialized and the top step of the podium at Val de Vie. It was unsurprising then that Sina Fry and Laura Stigger drove up the tempo on the first climb and summited with a slight advantage over their chasers. Faces CST's Candice Lill and Mariska Strauss, who took over at the top, joined the race leaders on the offensive, as did Computer Mania's Cherie Redeker and Adelaide Morath along with Team Salusmen. The gap to Fairtree, chasing in 5th on the road, was not so large as to make it difficult for Amy McDougall and Jenny Steenhoag to chase back on. The South African-Swedish pair had a quiet week at the Absa Cape Epic, yet they started the penultimate day in 4th overall, more than 10 minutes up on the more visible but entirely luckless Computer Mania. As the pace eased, the riders took the opportunity to refuel. This also allowed Liv Lapierre, Sarah Hill and Vera Lossa to make contact with the group. They shared a moment of brief celebration before the next phase of the race commenced. Back with the men, where Jordan Saru is in a world of trouble. The French rider had finished the previous stage with an exhausted look in his eyes and was yo-yoing off the back of the front group after only an hour and 50 minutes of racing on stage 6. He was too gutsy, however, to let the riders ahead escape without a fight. Bobbing and weaving out of the saddle, he fought to remain in contact, hoping against hope that his legs would miraculously improve, or that some external factor would affect a slowing of the pace ahead. And by some random act of fortune for the 91 Songo Specialized team, ill luck struck Buff Scott. On a single-track climb, just as it appeared that Saru was on the verge of being dropped for good, Hans Becking punctured. It spelt the end of Becking and Jose Diaz's drive for a 3rd successive stage win. Diaz had come back down the trail to help Becking repair the puncture, which cost them the best part of 2 minutes. While Trek Pirelli passed the stricken Buff Scott mid-puncture repair, the Portuguese and Dutch combination got underway before the Absa African red jersey wearers Paiga Eurosteel had the chance to pass them too. In the absence of Buff Scott, Bulls 2 took over the pace-setting duty. Martin Fry and Simon Stiepjan had noted Jordan Saru's travails and took the opportunity to keep the pressure on the race leaders. In an effort to shed weight, Saru dropped his hydration pack at the second water point. This cost him a few seconds, but with Buff Scott chasing behind and Bulls 2 charging ahead, he needed to be as lithe as possible, especially for the climbs to come. On one such climb, Fry and Steve John upped their tempo a little more, dropping the struggling Saru. His partner Matt Beers remained with him, hoping to pace the 2020 world champion back. Turning into Python climb, which would take the teams into the Velvet Bus Valley and onto the Wild Boar trails, 91 Songo Specialized had regained their composure. They had Bulls 2 in their sights and were doing everything they could to keep them there. Try as they might, Martin Fry and Simon Steve John could not quite up their speed enough to snap the elastic to the chasing Beers and Saru. The men in yellow regained contact near the summit of the climb. This gave them the 3 kilometers of descending to regain their breath. Once in the Wild Boar trails, 91 Songo Specialized knew they would be able to rely on their superior technical skills to make up for any deficits in freshness. On the district roads, the muddy conditions were taking their toll on the women's race. If not physically, certainly mentally. A constant battle to clear glasses, not swallow grit with every sip from the bottle, and hunting for dry lines was starting to wear on the group. Before long, it began to splinter again, aided by a climb back into the vineyards. On the descent that followed, Candice Lill dragged Mariska Strauss, Sina Fry and Laura Stigger clear. The quartet exercised more caution than usual, and while Stigger fiddled with a contact lens, her teammate Fry gave her a helping hand. Once the Austrian's vision was restored, she made her way to the front of the group and pulled the teams up a mercilessly dry climb. Having climbed out of the valley and up to the slopes above, where the drainage was better, the women were able to flow more readily through the trails. The gritty surfaces, which provide much of the terroir for Wellington trail building, are actually best ridden after the rain. Small gravel stones are held together by the moisture rather than becoming a layer of ball-bearing like stones waiting to trip up an unsuspecting rider. Mariska Strauss and Candice Lill are no strangers to riding on those trails, and as such they were comfortable leading 91 Songo Specialized through the single tracks. With a 30-minute buffer to face his CST, Sina Fry and Laura Stigger had no need to push the pace. They could afford to follow, biding their time for an attack on the final climb of the day, perhaps. Meanwhile, Ariane Luthi and Robin de Groot were hemorrhaging time to 91 Songo Specialized and faces CST. After de Groot's bad day on stage 5, it appeared that Luthi was in a bad way on stage 6. The Sarusmed pair had already effectively conceded second overall. The Wild Boar trails provided a thrilling ride for the leading men. Dropping into the Velvet Bus Valley, Bulls 2 chose the racing lines with 91 Songo Specialized hot on their heels. It would be difficult for either team to make a decisive break there. That was as long as nobody punctured, which is what happened to Buff Scott again. This time a front wheel puncture put them back behind Trek Borelli on the trails. With the wettest and most dangerous trails having been removed, the race didn't venture into the furthest reaches of the valley. Rather, it stayed on the well-established and best-trained trails. This, along with the skills of Simon Steve John, Martin Fry, Matt Beers and Jordan Saru, ensured that the pace remained exceptionally high. Whether consciously preventing the group behind from rejoining them or simply racing for the stage victory, the result was the same. Bulls 2 and 91 Songo Specialized remained alone at the front. Not even the hard-charging Buff Scott could dent their advantage, especially given that they remained locked behind Trek Borelli, the Italians using the narrow trails to protect their general classification positions. That tactic only worked while the single tracks flowed one into the other. As soon as the opportunity presented itself, Buff Scott slipped by. With that, Hans Becking and Jose Diaz went off in pursuit of the leaders, hoping that they might still have a chance of stage victory. Trek Borelli were forced to chase, defending their third position on general classification. Further down the trail, BMC KTM were holding fifth on the day, racing as much to gain Absa Cape Epic experience as they were for a stellar stage result, while Page Eurosteel were riding to extend their Absa African category lead. Philip Ace and Peter du Toit had certainly been the form local riders. They were worthy red jersey wearers. On the penultimate stage, Arne du Toit and Keegan Bontekoning of Insect Science were Base and du Toit's closest challengers. For the men at the front, the only battle left to fight was the one for stage honours. A muddy run through the dual tracks near the finish line gave Bulls 2 the advantage. With Matt Beers and Jordan Saru unable to come around Martin Fry and Simon Stevjan, the pair raced to line honours. The stage victory was the first for either rider in their combined 11 Absa Cape Epics. Beers and Saru were content with second. Hans Becking and Jose Diaz completed the podium places on the day.
You know, coming to the Cape Epic the first time, you're not dreaming about winning a stage straight away. But after some years, I always had the feeling that I have the potential to win a stage. And in the end, it's also about the right partnership and a bit of luck. You need in the right moment, and that worked out today super well. And that was the reason why I could finally reach that goal after 8 years.
The route how it's been laid out has been very tough. Having like the first 4 stages, like 4 hours, bang, bang, bang. We normally have like a TT or something to break it up, but the conditions were super bad. Just the sand, you're just getting bogged in it, and then I blame my weight because I'm heavier, so I think it was harder for me. But no, it was good. And all the boys put on buff, and Bulls, they never let us have one free watch, so I appreciate the positive racing, and I enjoy every day.
The winning time for the day, 3 hours, 27 minutes and 15 seconds. Team Bulls 2 were 1.5 seconds quicker than 91 Songo Specialised in second. Buff Scott were third, 1 minute and 56 seconds faster than Trek Pirelli in fourth. The day's results mean that Matt Beers and Jordan Saru take a 6 minute and 38 second lead over Martin Fry and Simon Stevjan into the final stage. The battle for third on the Ultimate 2021 Absa Cape Epic podium is far closer. Samuel Porto and Fabian Ravensteiner hold a slender 46 second advantage over Hans Becking and Jose Diaz. Having circumnavigated the Velvenpass Valley on the wild boar trails, the leading women were climbing once more. Heading back towards Wellington, the day's final climb was a challenging one. On all the previous stages, 91 Songo Specialised had been able to make the decisive move at will on the final climb. But that was not the case on stage 6. Mariska Strauss and Candice Lill remained resolutely with Sina Fry and Laura Stigger. The women in orange and red thus summited together and started the descent towards Wellington in close formation. The quartet raced down the Golden Mile, following the lines of the rider ahead and taking no risks. With the general classification places unlikely to change any more on the day, there was no point in attempting to drop the other team with aggressive line choices so late in the stage. Both 91 Songo Specialised and Faces CST seemed content rather to allow the stage to come down to a sprint finish. And so it did. With Mariska Strauss getting a jump on Sina Fry and Laura Stigger, the sprinting fell to Candice Lill. But the South African cross-country champion failed to muster the power required to come around the 91 Songo Specialised pair. This allowed Fry and Stigger to claim their 7th stage win of the 2021 Absa Cape Epic. Ariane Luthi and Robin de Groot continued their battling ride to complete the stage in 3rd position. The result ensures that the final women's general classification podium is all but assured.
Yeah, today was a really interesting stage with all the mud and rain. I suffered a lot today, to be honest. It was hard racing at the front with the Specialised girls, but I just kept on eating and eating. Mariska looked after me well, and I managed to come into the finish with them, which is incredible. The sprint was kind of not on my radar at that point with my legs, and it was kind of already decided like a kilometre away because of all the mud and stuff. There was no place to overtake really, so just gave it all to the line.
Yeah, it was a super interesting stage. yeah, it started raining early in the morning or in the night, and it was super wet. And yeah, then I lost my contact lens during the race, and luckily I had a spare one with me. I took it in during riding, and then yeah, I lost it again last 5Ks, and I took the wrong turn, but that should be not a reason that the sprint was, that we had a sprint and was so close. Well done on the girls. They were really strong today and made us suffer. So yeah, really strong today.
91 Zongo Specialized victory was completed in a time of 4 hours, 14 minutes and 13 seconds. Faces CST sprint efforts ensured that they finished less than a second back. Salusmed conceded 12 minutes and 9 seconds to the stage winners and 12 minutes and 8 seconds to Faces CST. Sina Fry and Laura Stigger's lead is thus a very comfortable 30 minutes and 12 seconds. Mariska Strauss and Candice Lill moved up into second as Ariane Luthi and Robin de Groot conceded the position they held since stage 1. They are now nearly 11 minutes behind the women in second, but over an hour ahead of fourth. In the Virgin Active mixed category, Laura and Sebastian Stark, a Bauerbanner Young Guns, take over an hour's lead into the final stage. Restonics, Craig Uriah and Andrew Divenage hold a 1 hour and 10 minute advantage in the Dimension Data Masters race. And Bart Brenchens and Peter Wessel remain in the purple Grandmasters jersey. The CST Postal NL Bafang men have to prevent Barty Bucher and Hans-Jürg Gerber from taking more than 4 minutes and 41 seconds off them during stage 7. The grand finale takes the teams from Wellington to Val de Vie. The trail to the Valley of Life is anything but easy, however. 1,850 meters of climbing and 68 kilometers needs to be conquered first. A 15,000 Rand cash prize for the first men's and women's teams over the summit of the Haverkwa climb should make things interesting early on. After the Dimension Data hotspot, Protea and Freedom Struggle add to the challenges before the final Land Rover technical terrain, Bone Rattler, and the Val de Vie trails lead the riders home. A hero's welcome awaits on the Val de Vie polo fields, along with finishers' medals and a spot in the Absa Cape Epic Book of Legends.